Do not even think about moving to Chilliwack BC until you know these 5 truths.
You can't handle the truth!
That's right, in this video we're going to go over the 5 truths that you need to know if you're thinking about relocating to Chilliwack, British Columbia. We're going to talk about the commute and the transportation reality, as well as the outdoor lifestyle being a way of life. We're going to talk about the agricultural and rural influence and the neighborhood and lifestyle differences. And last but most certainly not least, we're going to talk about the true cost of living in Chilliwack, BC, both to purchase and to rent. So if you're thinking about moving to Chilliwack, stick around because I think you're going to love this video. Now, let me introduce myself really quickly in case you've landed here for the first time. My name is Joe Pratap, and I've been a real estate agent for the better half of the last 15 years. Helping people move to the valley is what I do. And if you find videos like this helpful, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button so that we can stay connected. Without further ado, let's get right into it. All right, so the first thing that we're going to discuss is the commute and transportation reality. If you grew up or you're moving from an area like Vancouver or Calgary or Toronto, you're gonna be disappointed in the rapid transit arrangements in the city of Chilliwack, BC. Now, it should be noted that this is not a Chilliwack, BC issue. This is really a Fraser Valley issue. And realistically, as soon as you leave Langley, BC, the transportation or rapid transportation isn't really good. It's not good in Abbotsford and it's not great in Chilliwack. Now, in Chilliwack, there is bus services and BC Transit does operate throughout Chilliwack. There are bus routes that'll get you where you need to go as long as you're not living farther away, like on the top of the eastern hillside or on the Rosedale side. You can likely get where you need to go, whether you're commuting to UFV or you're heading towards Vetter, you're heading towards downtown Chilliwack, the 1881 district. There are bus routes and they do travel throughout the week. I'll post a link to BC Transit's website, and to BC Transit's credit, the website is actually not bad. You can choose between weekdays and weekends and start to plan your routes if you live in Chilliwack. Now, of course, there is no rapid transit through the city of Chilliwack, much like there is none really through the city of Abbotsford, BC. The SkyTrain stops in Langley, well, soon to be Langley anyways, and then there is no real rapid transit. You can't hop on a SkyTrain and head towards the harbor front. You're gonna be driving from Chilliwack into Abbotsford and then across Abbotsford into Mission to hop on the West Coast Express if you're gonna be heading to Vancouver in terms of rapid transit. Now, if that's okay with you and you're not commuting to downtown Vancouver or Surrey, well, then you're probably not gonna notice a lot. But that brings us to our second point, which is commute times. And one of the things a lot of people bring up when they're thinking about moving further east and then they look at commute times in Abbotsford is, well, Chilliwack is really only another 25 minutes away, depending on where you live in Chilliwack, of course. But it's not just 25 minutes away and up to 40 minutes, depending on where you live. It's the fact that you're adding that duration to what's already a fairly long commute. Now, if you leave for work at 4 a.m. or 4:30 a.m., or even in the afternoon and you're not working a regular 9 to 5, you may notice this a lot less. But let me give you a prime example of a commute that's fairly average. My dad lives on the top of the eastern hillside, the furthest exit in Chilliwack, Annis Road exit, and then you're gonna zigzag all the way up the mountain, and he's on Elk Mountain. He commutes to Aldergrove, 264th, Gloucester Way. That's where his business is. For him to drive down the mountain to the highway, it takes approximately 12 minutes. Let's call it 15 minutes. And then from Chilliwack to Abbotsford, at about 6 a.m., it takes them around 30 minutes. But what happens is when you hit Abbotsford and areas like Puritanville or Mount Lehman, you start running into the bottlenecks. Now the bottlenecks on Highway 1 slow the commute right down. The first one being in Abbotsford. The second one being 264th. Now that happens to be where he gets off at 264th to go to work, but round trip from the top of Elk Mountain to 264th, it takes him just under 1 hour, and he leaves his house approximately 6 a.m. So let's put that into perspective. If you were to continue traveling into Langley, into Surrey, or into Vancouver. So if you're gonna add from that 264th to about 200th Street into Langley, assuming that's where you're heading, it would be about an additional 20 to 25 minutes, making your commute from Chilliwack, the furthest part, to Langley in just over an hour. Hour and 15, let's call it. Now from Langley to Surrey, you're adding about another 20 minutes. So for all intents and purposes, from the furthest part of Chilliwack into Surrey, we're now just over an hour and a half. Now, from Surrey to Vancouver, depending on where you're heading, let's use downtown Vancouver, for example. It would take you approximately 45 minutes to drive from parts of Surrey to downtown Vancouver. So now, from downtown Vancouver to Chilliwack, we're just over 2 hours one way. So if you are commuting into Vancouver from Chilliwack, you can expect to be in the car a total of 4 hours a day from the furthest part of Chilliwack into downtown Vancouver. Maybe that is a lot for you, maybe it's not. But the commute time when you live in Chilliwack is definitely something that you need to factor in that people don't tell you, because it all adds up. And Highway 1 at 264th and at 232nd and at 218th and at 200th Street is the bottlenecks that we're starting to see, and they're getting worse, not better. Now, of course, the longer commute times are going to be a trade-off, because in Chilliwack, you are going to get bigger parcels of land, whether that be a detached home or a townhome, and you're gonna get a quieter, slower pace of life. So the commute time may not be the deal breaker for moving to Chilliwack, BC. All right, now the second point that we're gonna talk about is the outdoor way of life in Chilliwack, BC. There's some things you need to know. First off, if you love the outdoors, Chilliwack is paradise. You are surrounded by beautiful mountains. There are a ton of destination lakes that you can visit, like Cultus Lake, like the Vetter River, like Lindman Lake, for example, and all of those having many, many things, activities, kayaking, hiking, world-class mountain biking trails, all of those things around amenities like that that are very unique to the city of Chilliwack, British Columbia. Now, if you're into camping, dirt biking, you're into skiing or snowboarding, Manning Park is a short drive away. So if the outdoor lifestyle is something that appeals to you, you are absolutely going to love living in Chilliwack, BC. Now, newcomers are often shocked at how deeply outdoor recreation is part of the culture and part of the everyday life of people who live in Chilliwack, BC. And that shouldn't be intimidating. It should be something that you can thrive in. Now, some of the most popular things to do throughout the year in Chilliwack, BC, I know me and my kids love visiting Cultus Lake, going for a swim, spending some time at the beach. If you're into boating, wakeboarding, or wake surfing, Cultus is an awesome place to check out too as well. You can check out the hiking at Lindman Lake, which is absolutely beautiful and very, very scenic. The outdoor lifestyle is something that you're gonna love about living in Chilliwack, BC. Now, the third thing that we're gonna talk about is gonna be the agriculture and rural influence that you see in a community and a city like Chilliwack, BC. Because much of the land started from farms and areas in Chilliwack. They have really, really deep roots, no pun intended, when it comes to things like agriculture. It is not uncommon when you're driving through many of the streets of Chilliwack, BC, to be slowed down by things like slow-moving tractors or farmers' equipment transporting equipment from field to field. That is a thing in Chilliwack, BC, or at least most parts of Chilliwack, BC. Now, it is also not uncommon through the summer and late into the fall to have a smell in the city of things like farming and manure, and areas like Chilliwack, much like Abbotsford or Langley and Surrey, are not immune to it. That is something that you will notice when you live in Chilliwack, BC. Now, roadways have tractors, farms sell fresh produce, and there will be a strong buy local culture in the community of Chilliwack, BC, which is a good thing because it also means fresher food, there's more farmers markets, and a tight-knit community feel in the city of Chilliwack, BC. It's not uncommon if your kids' sports teams, your baseball teams, the hockey teams, they do many fundraising activities from farms and locally produced farms in the city of Chilliwack. There's a ton of good farms and cool things to check out. One of my favorite farms in Chilliwack being Greendale Acres. Now, Greendale Acres is a really cool place to take the kids to. You'll often see kids taking their field trips from elementary school to Greendale Acres. There's lots of stuff to do, from the corn maze, depending on the time of the year. In the summertime, there's outdoor concerts, lots of things to do at the Greendale Acres farm, one of many in Chilliwack, BC. All right, now the next point we're gonna discuss is gonna be neighborhood and lifestyle differences. Now, you hear people say it's a vibe, right? Chilliwack's a vibe. You hear people say that, right? It's a vibe. The thing is, Chilliwack is very diverse, and that vibe is gonna be very diverse depending on what your preferences are and where you live in the city of Chilliwack. Let me give you an example. People who live in Sardis often refer to where they live as Sardis. Very few people say, I live in Chilliwack. They say, I live in Sardis. Similar to how people in South Surrey tell people where they live compared to Surrey. You live in South Surrey? Oh, I live in South Surrey. I live in South Surrey. It's like a thing. That happens. That's something I notice anyways. A lot of people say, I live in Sardis. Oh, where do you live? I live in Sardis. Don't hear people that live in Sardis say, I live in Chilliwack. Just something that I happen to notice. But when we're talking about those areas, for example, and there's some differences, the community of Sardis. Okay, so Sardis is a very family-friendly community. Sardis is centrally located. So if you're going to things like the mall, the movie theater, the Sardis Rec Center, if your kids play hockey or lacrosse, or you're traveling to Garrison Crossing, right? Or you're heading out of town, Sardis is pretty centrally located. There's homes built in the early 90s and there's homes that are brand new. It's close to the good schools. It's a great place to live. Promontory, a little bit more east. It's on the hills. You got a lot better views than the flatter parts of Chilliwack, right? Traffic increases as you're coming up and down those hills. You need snow tires, right? Something to think about when it snows in the wintertime when you live on hills, right? Things like downtown or areas like downtown Chilliwack, the 1881 district, for example, where they've revitalized a lot of these breweries, these shops, these restaurants, made a really hip place to hang out. Really cool place to hang out during the winter, by the way, with the Christmas lights and the train. Really cool thing to check out. Or neighborhoods like Cedarbrook, where they're new, they're up and coming, and you got a whole bunch of different things being added to the community, like splash parks. Cedarbrook has movie nights in the summertime. Is that something that interests you? It's a pretty cool place to live. I have some very, very good friends and family that call Cedarbrook home. All of these things to consider when you're looking at moving to Chilliwack, BC, the neighborhoods and the lifestyle differences. All right, now let's talk a little bit about cost of living, both to rent or to purchase in Chilliwack, BC. Now, As a real estate agent, I often hear from people who sell and relocate from places like Coquitlam and Surrey and Langley. Quite often people consider moving to Abbotsford or moving to Chilliwack at the same time. Now, you need to know the differences. Like, the differences financially between Chilliwack and Abbotsford, on average, are usually 10 to 15% less expensive in the city of Chilliwack. So if you're deciding to move a little bit further east and you head to Chilliwack, you will most definitely be saving money, both on purchasing a home and on renting a home. And let's take a look at specific numbers. Now, we're gonna look at rental rates first and the stats from Zumper. Now, Zumper is a source for very good rental information. Let's take a look at what they happen to say about Chilliwack BC as a whole. Now, when we're talking about condos, the average condo rent in Chilliwack BC is just over $1,700, okay? Not bad, and that is less expensive than Abbotsford and Langley. When we look at townhomes, the average rent for a townhome is coming in just over $1,900. Now, that might seem low, but you gotta remember, in Chilliwack, there is a lot of older construction, so it's not uncommon to find townhomes that are 2-bedroom townhomes with no garages. That style townhome does exist quite often throughout the city of Chilliwack. So that is one of the reasons why the rental rate on a townhome might be significantly less than it is in Abbotsford or in Langley. Now, when we're talking about a detached home in Chilliwack, the average rent is $2,700 a month, which is a lot better than it is in Abbotsford or in Langley. And let's take a look at the benchmark prices when it comes to purchasing a home. In condos, according to the Canadian Real Estate Association, condos for 2024, the average sale price was $405,000. When we talk about townhomes, the average townhome sold for $640,000. And when we look at detached homes, the average sale price was $910,000. Now, all three of those numbers are about 10 to 15% less than what you would pay in Abbotsford, BC, and even more so when you're traveling further west and you're looking at neighborhoods like Langley or like Surrey. Now, the price to purchase a home in Chilliwack, BC is definitely the main reason a lot of people will consider relocating to Chilliwack, BC. All right, so those are the 5 things you need to know if you're thinking about moving to Chilliwack, BC. Now, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can reach me anytime. My name is Joe Pratap with RE/MAX, and you can reach me at 604-992-0616. If you'd like to chat about real estate, you can click the link below this video and book a call with me at a time that's convenient for you. Thanks for watching.